some breaking news now. There have been two small earthquakes, and they've rattled parts of Northern California this morning.
Only within 72 hours, two consecutive earthquakes shook the entire San Francisco Bay Area. Residents were extremely panicked. Everything became chaotic. No one understood what was happening. Things got even worse when an AI developed by Elon Musk issued a warning that something 1,000 times more terrifying was about to happen to this place. So, what exactly is happening in San Francisco? Could it be that those two earthquakes were just the beginning of a series of far more frightening natural disasters? In less than 3 days, two earthquakes occurred, and this is not a normal occurrence. The first earthquake struck on Friday morning, a few miles off the coast of San Francisco, right near the zoo area. The epicenter was at a depth of about 5 miles, with a magnitude of 3.7 on the Richter scale. The tremor caused noticeable shaking in some residential areas near the coast, but fortunately, no casualties were reported. The San Francisco Zoo, the closest to the epicenter, had to activate emergency procedures, but all animals and staff were safe. 2 days later, on Sunday morning at 8:50, the second quake unexpectedly struck in Pleasant Hill, northeast of the Bay Area, also with a magnitude of 3.7 on the Richter scale, but this time deeper, about 7 to 9 miles, and the shaking spread much wider, from Concord, Vacaville, to as far as Sacramento. Residents were terrified. Many rushed to the streets, and emergency response teams were deployed to inspect public structures. Just 40 minutes later, an aftershock of 2.1 magnitude occurred in the same area. What concerns scientists is that both earthquakes, occurring dozens of kilometers apart, had the same magnitude, similar average depth, and were located on a complex fault system that is gradually accumulating stress beneath the San Francisco Bay Area. As more data emerged, experts increasingly agreed on one thing: these may not be isolated events, but the first signals of a dangerous chain of movements beginning. So, what exactly is silently happening beneath the ground in California? According to seismologists, the two recent earthquakes are not random phenomena. They are part of a larger picture, a picture of a fault network entering a dangerously unstable state. San Francisco does not lie on just one fault. It is at the intersection of 4 major cracks: San Andreas, Hayward, Calaveras, and Rogers Creek. Imagine the ground beneath the city as a large glass plate, already riddled with countless cracks, and each small tremor could shatter the entire structure. Throughout 2024, the entire state of California recorded the highest number of earthquakes of 4.0 magnitude or higher since the 1980s. But what is even more frightening is not the large numbers, but the small tremors occurring in clusters, appearing increasingly frequent, spreading in a fan-like pattern from northern to southern California. Experts call this the phenomenon of uneven stress distribution, an extremely dangerous sign. It indicates that tectonic plates are not only slipping, but are getting stuck at various points, causing energy to accumulate sporadically like a series of timed bombs. One area under particularly close watch is the Parkfield segment, the central section of the San Andreas Fault. For over a century, this area has regularly experienced major earthquakes every 20 to 24 years. The last one was in 2004. This means it has now exceeded its expected cycle. Yet no significant tremors have occurred. In geology, silence is not a good thing. An area with a history of regular activity that suddenly goes quiet. It means it is holding back all its energy, instead of releasing it gradually. And when it unleashes, it will no longer be an ordinary earthquake, but a full-scale explosion that could trigger a series of surrounding faults. In other words, the cracks are stretching by the hour, and San Francisco is standing right at the junction of this entire system. More seriously, hidden deep beneath California is one of the most dangerous fault systems on the planet. In that network, no name is more terrifying than the San Andreas Fault, a colossal geological crack over 750 miles long, running through the entire state of California, where two massive tectonic plates of the Earth, the Pacific and North American, constantly rub and push against each other with a silent but unstoppable force. Each year, the San Andreas slips about 1.3 inches. It sounds small, but when that energy is compressed over decades without being released, it becomes a giant geological bomb lying deep underground, waiting for a strong enough trigger to explode. Particularly dangerous is the southern segment of the fault, stretching from Palm Springs to the Salton Sea, which has not experienced a major earthquake in over 300 years. According to scientists' calculations, the natural cycle of this area is about 250 years. This means it is nearly a century overdue, and the longer the delay, the greater the accumulated energy, the more catastrophic the risk. If this fault segment ruptures, simulation models suggest it could produce an earthquake as strong as 8.1 on the Richter scale. Such a quake would be powerful enough to collapse thousands of buildings, completely disrupt major transportation routes, sever power, water, and communication systems, trigger massive fires, landslides, and a series of aftershocks lasting weeks. But if the San Andreas is a sleeping monster, the Hayward Fault is a dagger held at San Francisco's throat, silent but no less dangerous. The Hayward Fault is a fracture running through the most densely populated cities of the Bay Area: Oakland, Berkeley, Fremont. This is not only a residential hub, but also home to tens of thousands of buildings, bridges, rail lines, and critical infrastructure for the entire region. The last major earthquake on this fault occurred in 1868, with a magnitude of 6.9 on the Richter scale. As of now, 157 years have passed, and according to geologists' estimates, the natural activity cycle of the Hayward Fault is about 160 years. In other words, it is almost at the threshold of recurrence. And when that moment comes, the damage will be unimaginable. Worse still, the Hayward Fault is not alone. It directly connects to the Rogers Creek Fault, forming an interconnected system that can trigger each other. If both rupture simultaneously, the resulting earthquake could reach 7.4 on the Richter scale, enough to devastate large swaths of the East Bay area of San Francisco in just a few dozen seconds. According to warnings from the USGS, in the next 30 years, this area has a 31% chance of experiencing an earthquake greater than 6.7 on the Richter scale, the highest risk level in the entire state of California. More notably, this is an area rarely mentioned by the media, so most residents are still unprepared. Not only San Francisco, but the entire Northern California is also facing a colossal threat from the Cascadia subduction zone, which can produce some of the most powerful earthquakes on the planet. The Cascadia subduction zone lies along the coast from Northern California to Canada. This is where the Pacific Plate is slowly sliding beneath the North American Plate, a process called subduction, slow but accumulating tremendous energy. According to seismic models, Cascadia is fully capable of causing an earthquake exceeding 9.0 on the Richter scale, equivalent to the dual earthquake tsunami disaster in Japan in 2011. And Northern California is the southernmost point of this dangerous zone. Even worse, in recent months, seismic activity in nearby areas has also surged abnormally. Fault systems like Garlock, Walker Lane, extending into Nevada, or the Gorda Ridges near the northern coast have recorded numerous small consecutive earthquakes, indicating that stress is spreading and no longer confined to a single fixed area. Some seismic stations have even recorded a series of microquakes, small, short tremors, often imperceptible to human senses, but they are a hallmark of the process of energy accumulation and activation beneath the Earth's crust. Notably, a large portion of these microquakes have not been officially reported by the USGS, possibly because they are too small, or because monitoring systems lack sufficient coverage in more remote areas like Gorda or the Sierra Mountains. But for seismologists, silence in data does not mean nothing is happening. It only suggests we may be missing the first signs of a much larger geological event forming underground. Things became even more tense when Elon Musk appeared, not because of startups, taxes, or politics. This time, Elon Musk declared, "San Francisco is over due to geological reasons," and he wasn't just talking. Based on an AI model developed by Elon's research team, the system analyzed millions of geological data points on plate movement, fault cycles, aftershock density, and tectonic velocity in the San Francisco Bay Area. And the result was a shocking warning. The probability of a major earthquake exceeding 7.5 on the Richter scale occurring directly beneath San Francisco within the next 30 years is very high. Even worse, the AI simulated a worst-case scenario. No longer an ordinary earthquake, but a mega-earthquake of 9.2 on the Richter scale, with its epicenter right beneath the city. If that scenario occurs, San Francisco would be completely wiped off the map of the United States. High-rise buildings in the city center would collapse in less than 60 seconds. The Bay Bridge and Golden Gate Bridge would snap. The subway system would be buried under thousands of tons of concrete and debris, and the entire marina area, built on weak soil, would sink like a liquefied swamp. Massive fires would erupt everywhere due to exploding gas pipelines, and the entire city would be cut off from communication, electricity, water, and rescue operations. More than 850,000 people live in the direct danger zone, not to mention millions in the surrounding Bay Area who would be trapped, unable to evacuate, as all roads could be destroyed within the first 2 minutes. But the disaster wouldn't stop at San Francisco. This city is the hub of economic, infrastructural, and data connectivity for the entire United States. If it collapses, the financial system in Silicon Valley would be paralyzed. Dozens of tech companies and thousands of servers located here would cease operations, directly impacting the internet, banking, e-commerce, and global supply chains. Seismic waves could spread as far as Los Angeles, triggering a chain reaction affecting other faults like San Andreas, Hayward, Rogers Creek, and even causing aftershocks as far as Seattle or subsidence in Nevada. And if a tsunami occurs, which is entirely possible with a 9.2 magnitude earthquake, Pacific coastal areas like Hawaii, Japan, and even Australia's east coast would need to issue emergency warnings. In other words, a single earthquake in San Francisco could trigger a global geopolitical, economic, and technological crisis. That's why Elon Musk didn't just issue a warning. He called for a complete overhaul of San Francisco's infrastructure, especially old structures that don't meet earthquake-resistant standards, rebuilding the electricity, water, and rescue networks to military standards, and developing a survival plan for when the big one actually happens. Whether that AI model is absolutely accurate or not. Elon said only one sentence that silenced everyone. If you wait until it happens to believe, it's already too late. But San Francisco is not alone in the fracture. It is only the first link in a chain of collapses that could shake the entire west coast of the United States. Located right at the western edge of the North American plate, the U.S. West Coast has long been a transition zone between multiple major fault systems, each accumulating geological stress in its own way. To the south, the San Andreas Fault segment running through Palm Springs and the Salton Sea has remained dormant for over 300 years, far exceeding its average activity cycle. To the north, the Cascadia subduction zone poses an even greater threat, because here, the Pacific plate is not just rubbing, but is being completely subducted beneath the North American plate, creating a massive compressed energy block that could unleash at a magnitude of 9.0 or higher. East of San Francisco, the Garlock Fault system, once considered secondary, is now showing abnormal signals. Small segments are beginning to experience localized tremors with increasing frequency. Further out is the Walker Lane, a geological fracture stretching along the edge of Nevada, which absorbs up to 25% of California's tectonic movement and is now also closely monitored by researchers due to unprecedented silent tremors in the past 40 years. Everything happening in San Francisco is no longer a local phenomenon. Geologists call this fault chain amplification, when geological stress is not just concentrated at one point, but begins to spread in a domino effect along the entire tectonic plate boundary. A single explosion in the San Francisco Bay, even from a small segment of the Hayward or Calaveras Fault, would be enough to trigger a chain reaction, activating the southern segment of San Andreas, affecting Garlock, and even reaching the Cascadia subduction zone to the north. If this scenario occurs, the consequences will extend far beyond California's borders. Los Angeles, San Diego, Sacramento, Seattle, major coastal cities along the Pacific, could all shake simultaneously. The federal transportation system, including the I-5 interstate highway, Amtrak railways, numerous airports, and strategic seaports, would face the risk of mass paralysis within hours. Even worse, a significant portion of global data infrastructure is rooted here. Many international undersea cables connecting the U.S. to Japan, South Korea, Singapore, and Australia pass through high-risk seismic coastal areas. If the faults cause seafloor landslides or trigger a tsunami, the entire international internet traffic would be disrupted, from financial transactions and GPS systems to the operation of automated global supply chains. Such a disruption would not only paralyze tech companies in Silicon Valley, but could also lead to a cascading collapse in international financial markets. And when major coastal cities lose power, communication, and access by road, the entire West Coast would become an emergency red zone stretching thousands of kilometers, where rescue operations cannot be deployed, supplies cannot reach, and the medical system is completely overwhelmed. San Francisco may shake first, but if it shakes hard enough, the tremor will spread far, and the whole world will feel it. Looking back, this is not the first time San Francisco has been brought to its knees by a rumble from the earth. History has proven that what Elon Musk warns about is entirely possible. In October 1989, when millions of Americans were watching the live broadcast of the Giants vs. Athletics game in the prestigious World Series, the ground suddenly shook. A 6.9 magnitude earthquake from the Loma Prieta Fault struck directly at the San Francisco Bay Area. The game's broadcast was cut off midway, but the worst wasn't at the stadium. It was in the dozens of bridges, highways, and residential areas collapsing by the minute. 63 people died. Over 3,700 were injured. Hundreds of buildings were severely damaged. The Cypress Structure Highway collapsed. On the Bay Bridge, a section of the upper deck shattered and fell onto the lower deck, forcing an emergency closure of the vital transportation link between San Francisco and Oakland. Many residential areas lost power, water, and communication, and were completely isolated from the outside. In the Marina District, where most homes were built on artificial soil, the ground liquefied within seconds, a phenomenon called liquefaction. The earth split open, water and sand surged like geysers, and seemingly sturdy houses collapsed into the ground as if swallowed whole. The quake didn't last long, only about 15 seconds. But its aftermath left the entire nation stunned. Transportation was paralyzed, goods stalled, an entire economic region froze, and millions were plunged into extreme panic. And the key point is, that was only a 6.9 magnitude earthquake. It didn't occur directly beneath the city. It wasn't the largest possible quake, and it was enough to bring San Francisco to its knees. Now, the faults surrounding the city, from San Andreas to Hayward, are accumulating energy far greater than in 1989. If the next one is 7.5 or 8.1 or worse, 9.2 on the Richter scale, as Elon Musk's AI has warned, then San Francisco won't just be shaken. It will be obliterated. But even before Loma Prieta, and far more horrific San Francisco, once witnessed an earthquake that turned the entire city into a sea of fire. The 1906 earthquake. On the morning of April 18, 1906, a 7.9 magnitude earthquake suddenly struck the city. Residents hadn't even woken up when the ground shook as if exploding. In an instant, over 80% of San Francisco was destroyed. More than 3,000 people died, tens of thousands were injured, and over 250,000 were left homeless, nearly two-thirds of the city's population at the time. But the horror didn't stop there. Gas pipelines burst simultaneously. As buildings burned, firefighters, with no other choice, used explosives to demolish walls to stop the fire from spreading, inadvertently causing more fires. The flames raged for 3 days and nights, incinerating the entire city center. Fire and smoke rose so high that ships offshore could see San Francisco's sky glowing red. Part of the city was almost completely erased, impossible to repair, only to be rebuilt from scratch. The aftermath of the 1906 earthquake not only changed architecture, but reshaped America's understanding of how fragile a major city is before nature's power. San Francisco was later replanned, with stronger infrastructure, new pipelines, and new building codes. But the irony is, the fault that caused that earthquake, San Andreas, is still there, right beneath. San Francisco has shaken, not once, but twice, in just 72 hours. But what makes experts warn is not the frequency or intensity, but the location, where California's largest faults are silently accumulating stress, from San Andreas, Hayward to Calaveras and Rogers Creek. The entire ground beneath this city is stretched like a taut string. A small jolt could trigger a chain reaction with destructive power 100 times greater than what has happened before. History has proven a single 6.9 magnitude earthquake in 1989 was enough to collapse bridges, break roads, and topple houses. But if what Elon Musk's AI simulated comes true, with a 9.2 magnitude quake directly beneath the city, the consequences will not stop at the United States. The city will sink into ruins. Global internet will be disrupted. Supply chains will stall, and the entire U.S. West Coast will become a cascading disaster zone. The most terrifying thing is not the earthquake. It's time, because all the data, cycles, and current movements point to one thing: we are getting very close to the breaking point. San Francisco has been rebuilt after past collapses, but there's no guarantee it will withstand if the next quake exceeds all calculated scenarios. The question now is not will it happen, but how much time do we have to prepare? And if the answer is not much, then the next step isn't prediction, but action. Because when the Earth moves, no city will be fast enough to escape, not even San Francisco. If you find this video interesting, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to not miss out on more exciting content. Please share your opinions in the comments section. Thank you for watching. And don't forget, what we share in this video is for reference and analysis from various perspectives. Please combine it with other sources of information for a more comprehensive and objective view.